Which brings me to a question about, just generally in terms of food choice. Can we come up with a relatively short summary of the following? Tell me if this is correct or not. That most of us should be focused on, for sake of health span and lifespan, should be focused on ingesting minimally non-processed and minimally processed foods, maybe even cooking our own food. I realize that's heresy now, but ideally we would do some of that and really trying to avoid foods that are highly processed and have lots of sugar. And I'm using this as a segue to get into a question that I really want your answer to. I've been dying to ask you this, which is if sugar intake is not actually going up as much as people think it is, why are people getting so much fatter? Right. So what do you think about just a general statement that we should try and eat foods that are low to no, minimally to not processed for about 80% of our foods? Is that a reasonable number?
It's hard to actually get completely unprocessed food because almost everything goes through some form of processing.
Right. So I'm thinking like anything that wouldn't survive long without refrigeration. Yeah, on a shelf, like an apple or a banana or something. Yeah. Oatmeal, like ground oats, to me, as long as there isn't a bunch of other stuff in there, would be minimally processed. Yeah. A steak is not really processed, although it's cut off the animal, et cetera. So there's a few steps in there, but that's what I mean.
Yeah. And I think everybody kind of gets the gist. I'm probably a little bit pedantic when it comes to this stuff.
No, this is good. Actually, one of the things I appreciate about you is something that I get teased a lot by people close to me, which is the caveats and the insistence on precision is really important because especially with online communications these days, it's like a runaway train. People will,
it's too easy to misinterpret what you're saying.
Very easy to misinterpret. And the misinterpretations are often used to leverage whole new ideas about what is and isn't true, mostly about what is true. So I really appreciate the nuance. And this is what a long form podcast really allows us to do is catch every curve.
Yeah. So I would 100% agree with what you said, that if you were going to make a broad stroke, that trying to focus on minimally processed foods is very important. The one caveat I would say is I think it's important to understand why, because otherwise people can make this weird association that like if I eat any any processed food, it's going to kill me, or like every time I eat it, it's like I'm smoking a cigarette and my health, my longevity is declining. Based on the studies we have, it's mostly about the energy. That processed food just gets people to spontaneously eat more. And Kevin Hull showed this in his study that was, he designed some of the most elegant studies in nutrition.
He's great.
And they basically took people from a minimally processed food diet and then gave them access to ultra-processed foods, very few instructions, just eat till you feel satisfied, and they spontaneously increased their calorie intake by 500 calories a day. I mean, that's massive. So and we haven't quite figured it out. People say, well, it's sugar. It doesn't appear to be sugar in terms of just in isolation. Well, it's fats. It doesn't appear to be fats in isolation. Well, it's the combination of sugar and fat. Partly, it's the combination of sugar, fat, and salt. Partly, but there's some kind of like overall magic to the texture and the mouthfeel and just the overall palatability of stuff, which is always why I say there's like right and wrong ways to do these different diets. Like, for example, like there's a right way to do plant-based, and then there's, like what's in some of these documentaries where they're eating like plant-based mac and cheese. And again, I love a good mac and cheese, but like that should not be pitched as a healthy diet just because it's plant-based, right? Because you're eating a highly processed food that's very palatable and easy to overeat. Same thing for keto. You've now got like keto ice creams, and you've got, keto cookies and all these sorts of things. And I'm like, and if you look at them, they actually have more calories than the normal stuff. And I'm like, this is completely missing the point here. Like, you're actually just taking yourself, like the whole point of those diets is the reason you tend to lose weight is originally like, good luck, 10 years ago doing a keto diet, eating processed food, right? Like, you just couldn't do it really. Now you can. But the problem is it's not going to work because you're going to be still consuming too many calories, because even though it's keto, what are they doing? Well, they're trying to make it more palatable. They're trying to make it better mouthfeel, which I guess if you're being keto for the sake of being keto, great. But if you have hopes of body composition modification, it's going to, really negatively impact. So yes, I think minimizing the amount of processed food you consume can be important. Now, that being said, it depends on the individual and their goals. If your goal is to, for example, build muscle or maintain a high body weight for a sport, for example, like an NFL offensive lineman or something of that nature, or if you're, I worked with an NBA team. They were kind of, I can't disclose anything, but they were looking at drafting a certain player. Like for them, processed foods may actually be a tool.
Or teenagers.
Right.
We all want young people to eat more healthfully, I think, develop great habits, but some of them, their caloric needs are so high that if they were eating what I eat, they're going to dissolve into, they're just waste away.
So I describe this again with a financial example. It's like a budget, right? So if I make $1 million a year, for example, is it okay for me to buy like a $100,000 sports car? Let's assume that loans don't exist, right? Is it okay for me to buy a $100,000 sports car if I still am able to pay my mortgage and pay my utilities and like take care of my responsibilities, the things I should do? Is it okay if I do that, if it like makes me feel good and it's fun?
By me.
Yeah, it's fine, right? Like it fits in your budget. If I make, $50,000 a year, should I be going out and, buying a sports car? Probably not, because I'm not going to be able to pay my mortgage and all these other responsibilities. So your protein, your fiber, your micronutrients, these are your responsibilities. But those become much easier to hit when you have higher calories, right? So if you're eating 4,000 calories a day for whatever goal you have, you're probably going to have some left over, and like good luck eating 4,000 calories from minimally processed foods. Quite frankly, you'll be miserable because you're going to have such gut fill that you're going to feel like you can't even move. And so again, now it becomes, okay, well, is there something inherent to that food processing? Is there something, that we can pick out that we know, okay, well, this is going to be a negative effect on health, even like body composition stuff aside? And I would say there's not really great evidence of that so far. And a great example of that is sugar. I mean, I actually just wrote a really long article on my website about why I think sugar was not the root cause of the obesity epidemic. And you kind of mentioned like sugar intake in the last 20 years has actually gone down a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Alcohol intake, well, if you look on the whole, it might have gone up a little bit, but certainly in the male sector, it's gone way down. Drinking used to be, there was a 5 o'clock, people were drinking all day. People are smoking a lot less.